So Romans, let's talk about them. If you're going to implicate a society, if you're going to implicate a people, remember Rome fell, right? Rome fell. Did Rome fall? And
I think it kind of just connects back into what I was saying before with how like even though the Jewish people and the Greek people who had those languages that wrote those scriptures, and it was translated later to the word cross, it shows that the culture of the day and the empire of the day with the Romans, the cross had the crossbeam. And with the cross having a crossbeam there, then even the early church fathers, the ones who were being discipled by the disciples, by the apostles themselves,
like Polycarp.
Polycarp being someone in that time of history as well, they referred to the cross.
Absolutely.
And we even see in evidence that there was a drawing, a graphic of this image mocking Christians because they worshipped Jesus as God. And this image is showing a picture of Jesus with the head of a donkey. Okay. And his arms are like this.
On a cross.
On a cross.
Okay. You know what? The early writers, I know because I just went through Irenaeus against heresies, and Tertullian mentions this, draws this beautiful image of Jesus being like a bird spread out on the cross, right? And so it is obvious. Even some of the earliest artwork was presented. There was no other way of doing it. Now, who was it that you said? Was it Jehovah's Witnesses think that he was?
He was just nailed on a upright.
Is that Jehovah's Witnesses?
Upright stake. Yeah, that's the Jehovah's Witnesses that actually believe
on
that.
Upright stake.
They believe that his hands were nailed like this.
Right.
And that
so the cross.
And this is an interesting thing because
the cross is offensive.
You to them it is.
Interesting. And
the Roman cross is offensive to the Jehovah's Witnesses. And it's
feel free, you people out there, if you know Jehovah's Witnesses, I don't know enough about it. If we're speaking of the right sect of people that believe Jesus was hung on a stake, straight up and down, and if they do find the cross offensive, I find that incredibly interesting that they find the cross.
And there's
offensive.
Actually evidences within Scripture that, like, without even having the word cross in there, there's evidences that show that it would have been a Roman cross.
That he was hung on a cross.
Like that's just translated to our language because they didn't have the word for it. That's an English word.
No, you know what?
Okay,
I have to study this, Brad.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever said that to me.
Okay,
I've never heard it before, so I have to study this because I was like, I'm thinking of.
I'm just gonna share some evidences within Scripture that show that he was hung like this.
Okay, show me.
So
tell me.
So
I think
you know of that there was a plate or a sign put above his head that said, "This is the King of the Jews." Right?
Yes, and they were mad.
So it was above his head. It wasn't above his hands.
That is fantastic.
And another point, when doubting Thomas asks to see the scars, he asked to see the scars and where the nails, plural, crucified him.
Okay, but there would have been nails in the hands, one nail, and a nail in the feet. Nails.
But
so you could draw that argument, but
yeah.
I like the first one's way better because the sign was over his head.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, okay. I'm thinking of verses that do speak directly about the cross, and I would have to refresh my memory on those verses, but I'm very sure it speaks about the cross directly. Now, does that mean that the word that was used for the cross was actually
like the prophecies in the Old Testament? When you read those, it'll say he who was cursed is hung on a tree.
Yeah.
So then when we get to the New Testament and talk about how the crucifixion actually took place, they have the word cross there because it was taking place during the Roman time.
This is new to me. I'm 56 years old and this is new to me. I've never heard that before, that there wasn't a word for that. I know there was a scripture talking about hung on a tree, but take a look at how Judas was hung on a tree. Cursed is every man who hangs on a tree, right? And Judas fulfilled, he was cursed, right? And that fulfilled scripture as well. His bellies were open out, right? And
well, he hung himself, right?
But what did he hang himself on? A tree, right?
Okay.
In the field, right? Wasn't it a tree?
The field is what the money that he betrayed Christ purchased, and that's also a fulfillment of prophecy.
Okay, that's true. But he hung himself on a tree, and he was cursed. That was a sign of his cursing, I believe.
I haven't. I don't know if that's in scripture, but
all right. Well, I'll have to. You know what? Sometimes I learn so many. Or I'm studying so many things that I actually go, hold it, was that in scripture?
Yeah, right.
And that's the part I guess we got to watch.
We got to be watchful of that.
Yeah. When we're studying scriptures, it's easy to go. I was reading this apocryphal work, of King James 16:11, and then you're talking and you actually go, wait, that wasn't scripture. That was. That was extra biblical information. So
I'm just wanting to supply this collection of evidences from that we see.
Well, I've never heard that one, but
from Scripture and outside Scripture in the early church, that it shows that the Roman cross was significant before Constantine popularized it at 300 AD.
Right. On everything.
Yes, so because that was then became the symbol for Christianity.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And the church. And
because before that there was so much suffering.
I don't know.
It was just a mark of mockery.
The Nicene treaties in 325, when the Catholic Church was basically born, didn't the Catholic Church through history, I'm sure they did, they used the cross as a symbol as well.
The Roman Catholicism, that came out of the Pope being able to get more power because of Constantine, because the government now was approval of
that's what
the religion.
But it was birthed very early on.
Yeah.
It grew into that because, look, you have, when was Constantine?
300.
300? Yeah, okay, so, it was really set in motion, like I said, the Nicene treaties and then Constantine. I thought Constantine
because there was so much persecution before that.
Oh, terrible, but amazing. In fact, I've got a book here on the persecution of the saints and how Polycarp died. It's a fascinating work. Fascinating that these writings survived, and if they didn't, some of them were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Really amazing history of the church and the accuracy. You know, in the old days when they did history, you know, men would get killed if they didn't accurately record history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So guys like Josephus and Eusebius, they had to be presenting church history and other writers as well. You know, we lost the Library of Alexander and a lot of these libraries. These early writers had access to some of these writers. Right? To some of these articles written in history that we don't have access to. So they, somebody said to me, well, now that Bible schools have been implemented into our culture, now the Bible colleges and schools have been implemented, that we have a greater and a vast knowledge of these things. And the early church didn't really have knowledge of certain things. That's an absolute lie. It's amazing. Even their canonization of Scripture was incredibly accurate. If you read the works of Origen and Irenaeus and talking about the arrangements of Scripture, Clement, and amazing knowledge and all revealed by the Spirit of Christ to keep them on inaccurately or on accurate scales. Really amazing, actually.